Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a massive crossroads that pretty much every growing business faces right now: choosing the right cloud desktop strategy. See, Microsoft gives us three distinct paths to the cloud: Windows 365, Azure Virtual Desktop, and Azure VM. Now, they might sound kind of similar at first glance, but trust me, they're built for entirely different growth strategies. So, which one is the actual engine for your business? Well, let's figure it out together.
You know the traditional setup, we all remember it. That bulky physical machine gathering dust under a desk, stubbornly tied to a single location, running incredibly rigid hardware. Well, as more and more businesses break away from on-premises desktops, that picture is fading fast. We're stepping into the modern arena of cloud computing, but with three different Microsoft solutions staring back at us, the options can honestly feel a bit overwhelming at first.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our ultimate fight card for today. First, we'll cover the cloud PC landscape. Then, Windows 365 for simple predictability, Azure Virtual Desktop for flexible scale, and Azure VM for maximum control. After that, we'll throw them into a head-to-head showdown and finally wrap up with building your hybrid strategy.
Starting with Section 1, the cloud PC landscape and understanding the foundation. So before we pit these contenders against each other, we absolutely need to understand the shared DNA between them. At their core, all three are forms of a cloud PC. Basically, this is just a virtual computing environment hosted in Microsoft's cloud infrastructure instead of on a local physical machine. Simple enough, right? That's the baseline. The real battle, and the crucial differences we're exploring today, lie entirely in how they are packaged, managed, priced, and customized.
Let's look at Section 2, Windows 365, where it's all about simple predictability.
Think of this option like ordering off a set menu at a really good restaurant, or maybe getting a turnkey apartment rental. Windows 365 is Microsoft's most straightforward offering. It gives each employee a dedicated, persistent desktop, which means their files and settings stay exactly how they left them every time they log in. You get simple, per-user, fixed monthly pricing. That makes budgeting a total breeze. Plus, it requires minimal IT overhead because Microsoft is handling all the heavy lifting in the background, meaning you can deploy new PCs in literally minutes. Add in the familiar Windows interface, and your training time drops to practically zero. So do you have a small IT team that just wants things to work seamlessly? If so, this is built for you.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the inherent trade-off. That incredible, predictable pricing and low maintenance, it comes at the direct cost of granular flexibility. Because it's a fixed package per user, it really lacks the custom tweaks you might need for fluctuating workloads. And hey, if you're a massive enterprise, buying a fixed-price seat for every single employee can actually get pretty costly compared to models that share resources. It's also just not ideal if you have highly seasonal, short-term computing needs.
To sum up the perfect user profile here, our source nails it. Choose Windows 365 if you want a simple, predictable cloud PC with minimal setup and prioritize ease of budgeting over maximum flexibility. If you just want a reliable, personal virtual desktop without dedicating your IT staff to constantly managing it, this is absolutely your path.
Moving on to Section 3, Azure Virtual Desktop, focusing on flexible scale.
But what if your business needs a bit more horsepower? Well, if Windows 365 is that set menu, Azure Virtual Desktop, or AVD, is the ultimate all-you-can-eat customizable buffet. It's a highly flexible engine built right on top of Azure's infrastructure. And notice this first point, multi-session capability. This is an absolute game changer, folks. Multiple users can share a single virtual machine, which drastically slashes overall costs. You get consumption-based pricing that perfectly adapts to fluctuating workloads, and you can endlessly customize your VM sizes and storage. It even supports both persistent and non-persistent models. Simply put, this thing is purpose-built to handle massive, complex IT environments.
But we do have to balance the argument here. AVD is highly scalable and cost-efficient at scale, absolutely. But unlike the plug-and-play nature of Windows 365, AVD requires serious, hands-on IT expertise. The initial setup is way more complex. And because the pricing is consumption-based, it can be really tough to predict your monthly bill unless you're doing careful, active monitoring. You really need dedicated Azure knowledge to keep this powerful engine running smoothly.
As this quote emphasizes, choose Azure Virtual Desktop if cost efficiency at scale matters more than simplicity. So, you have to ask yourself, does your IT team actually have the expertise to manage this? If your organization is growing rapidly, or you have highly variable, seasonal workforce needs, AVD is incredibly powerful. Next up, Section 4,
Azure VM, giving you maximum control.
If the first two options were restaurants, Azure VM is like buying the raw ingredients to construct your own kitchen from scratch. And this brilliantly illustrates why specialized teams crave this option. And Azure VM provides raw, unadulterated cloud computing infrastructure. You get absolute control over the operating system, the configuration, and the entire software stack. It's perfectly suited for dev environments, testing labs, or running heavily customized apps. You get flexible pay-as-you-go or reserved pricing, plus the granular ability to scale, resize, or just completely shut down resources on demand. Heck, it even supports non-Windows operating systems.
However, as we know, absolute power comes with absolute responsibility. You get total customizable control, sure, but it carries the highest administrative overhead of all three options. Remember, this is not an out-of-the-box desktop meant for your everyday end user. And there is a very real risk of escalating costs if resources aren't meticulously managed, aka accidentally leaving the lights on in the cloud when everyone goes home for the long weekend.
To put it plainly, choose Azure VM if you need highly specialized environments, and you're building custom infrastructure rather than standard desktops. Think of it as a powerful blank canvas designed specifically for technical teams and developers who need to get their hands dirty and manually configure every single aspect of the environment.
All right, Section 5, the head-to-head showdown. This is where it gets fun.
Okay, so we've met the contenders individually. Now let's see how they actually stack up against each other. So the crucial point is how cost, management, and scalability intersect here. On the cost front, Windows 365 gives you that predictable flat fee, no surprises. AVD is cost-efficient but only when you scale it, and Azure VM gives you the widest possible range based on your usage. For management, Windows 365 is super minimal overhead, AVD needs dedicated admins, and Azure VM demands intense hands-on maintenance. And scalability is totally different for each. Windows 365 is just adding or removing licenses. AVD dynamically scales with multi-session sharing, and Azure VM is all about precise, raw compute scaling. Matching these realities to your own internal resources, that's exactly how you make your choice.
Finally, Section 6, building your hybrid strategy.
Okay, here is the major plot twist of this whole explainer. What if I told you that you don't actually have to pick just one path? Seriously, look at this theoretical hybrid workforce. You could easily deploy Windows 365 for your general staff who just need a standard, reliable daily desktop. Then, at the exact same time, you spin up Azure Virtual Desktop for a seasonal department that has huge fluctuations in headcount. And finally, you keep a few Azure VMs reserved purely for your developers who need that raw, unconstrained infrastructure. Mixing and matching these models means you're never forcing a rigid, one-size-fits-all solution onto a dynamic business. It lets your IT strategy naturally evolve as your workforce demands shift.
Let's move to and see how this builds a concrete migration action plan. Because no matter which specific path or hybrid model you go with, the foundational steps are identical. Step 1, take a hard look and assess your current hardware, software, and licenses. Step 2, identify exactly which teams fit which model best. Step 3, carefully map out your data and user profile migration. Step 4, and I can't stress this enough, run a pilot program. Test it in just one department first to iron out the kinks before a full rollout. And Step 5, train your employees on any new interface changes so they aren't left in the dark.
As we wrap up this explainer today, the biggest takeaway is this. There is no single universal winner here. In fact, they aren't even competing for the same jobs. The real shift we're talking about is breaking free from rigid, hardware-bound setups and moving toward a cloud-first approach that actually breathes and scales with your business. So I want to leave you with one final thought. Are you ready to move away from rigid hardware and embrace a cloud-first approach that grows with you? Take a really honest look at your company's size, your in-house technical chops, and your long-term growth trajectory, and let that guide your decision. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and hey, happy building!